What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Pokemon evolution is a cornerstone of what makes these creatures so iconic. It's important enough that they put in low-leveled evolutions at the start of every game so that you'll know the kinds of changes you'll be in for. However, every now and then, you'll come across a Pokemon that can evolve in more than one way, sometimes without even knowing it, branching off into multiple different options. But not all Pokemon that can evolve in more than one way should. So it's up to us. Let's take a look at the top 6 best, and worst, Pokemon with branching evolutions. Number 6 worst, Slowpoke. Now, just to start off, I would like to make it really clear that just because a pair of Pokemon is on the worst side of the list does not mean that they are both bad or that I hate both of them or anything, because I like Slowbro a lot. It's become one of my favorites from Gen 1 over the years, and Slowking isn't really that bad either, but let me explain. To me, the whole reason for creating a branching evolution in the first place would be to gain access to a Pokemon that you couldn't have gotten before, with completely altered strengths and abilities, basically just something different from what we already had. Slowking does not fit this description at all, because it is almost exactly the same as the one that already existed. This is more forgivable if two Pokemon are introduced at the same time, but like many branched evolutions, Slowking was introduced at a later date, which means it's all the more egregious that it's basically the same as Slowbro. Swapping their defenses is the only change between them, and there's no real notable difference in their move pools either. If all they wanted was an aesthetic change of moving the shoulder, they could have just made it a form change. In fact, there are some form changes with bigger differences than these two supposedly separate Pokemon. And it's not as if the Galarian forms did it any favors. They are still both the exact same type, and at least now they have signature moves, I guess. I will admit that at least Slowbro cut its defenses for boosting attack, but Slowking has almost the exact same stats as before. Even when it got a regional form, it didn't change anything from when it didn't change anything from before. Again, I don't hate Slowking. But if you're going to make a whole new Pokemon with a new way to evolve it, they really ought to set themselves apart in some meaningful way aside from headgear. Number 6 best, Esper. Now, at the opposite end of the spectrum, we have a Pokemon that created differences that really didn't have to, but they did anyway. I realize that maybe gender variations of the same Pokemon don't constitute branching evolutions to some, but there are substantial alterations between the two that you can't get otherwise. If you didn't notice which gender your Esper was before, you will once it evolves. The males are more blue and the females are more white, but color is not where the effort stopped. The female Meowstic is more offensively focused, while the male leans more towards support. At the same levels, the female will learn a great attack, while the male will learn a helpful status move of some kind. And they also have contrasting abilities to highlight their separate combat emphases, which is honestly really impressive since they don't have differing stats or anything, but just the fact that the same Pokemon, with the same previous stage and deck slot, having different moves and abilities based on which way they evolved is truly remarkable. Even other gender differences like Pyroar and Jellicent couldn't pull that off. So for coming out of the blue with a unique spin on the concept of branched evolutions, Meowstic definitely deserves some recognition. Number 5 worst, Clamperl. Honestly, I forget the Clamperl line a lot. They're generally okay, I guess, but they show up way too late in Hoenn for them to be useful, since I would have to pass up about 37 other water types just to get there. Plus, they've got the misfortune of requiring 2 unique items for evolution that hold no other focus in the games, so that's a downer. And besides, I don't really get the evolutions anyway. Why does this clam turn into an eel? Whatever. If it weren't for Shell Smash, nobody would even care about these Pokemon. Seriously, did anyone ever fight with one before Gen 5 when that move came out? Name me one thing about them besides Shell Smash. Sure, Huntail is better with physical and Gorbis is more special, but honestly, it's not that huge of a difference. Other than the mouth sizes, the only thing distinguishing these Pokemon is the overload of needlessly pandering movesets. And when Hoenn already has so many great water types anyway, it's pretty easy to forget about these Pokemon that don't set themselves apart from themselves, much less any of the others out there. Number 5 best, Snorunt. Snorunt is a criminally underrated Pokemon, including, at one time, by myself. But to be fair, it was also pretty late in Hoenn, so I can see why people might not have had room to try it. But Glalie became a Pokemon that I went from not really caring about to becoming my favorite pure Ice type in the entire franchise. And then the Sinnoh region gave us another evolution in Frostlass, this time with the Ghost type. See, this is what branching evolutions should do. Adding a new type the rest of the line didn't have is a clear delineation between the two options. Even if one might be harder to evolve, it's great to have the choice. But outside of the surface level, Glalie and Frostlass have enough differences to fulfill different roles in combat. Glalie's stats are more balanced focused, while Frostlass has much higher speed but lower defenses, so there is some strategy in trying to pick which one. Although depending on who you are, there's also the moral question of killing your Snorunt so it turns into a Ghost type, but we're not really focusing on that. Some people probably think Frostlass is the better option just for its versatility, but worry not, because Glalie got a Mega Evolution with powerful Refrigerate. So while these Pokemon might share some tricks and a common origin, they behave in vastly different ways both in battle and in personality, which is exactly the kind of thing that justifies a branched evolution in the first place. Number 4 worst, Gloom. Whereas, on the other hand, Gloom provides us with the opposite, wondering why they even bothered. As we know, originally Gloom's family was just a standard line of Pokemon in Kanto, the only thing special about them being their counterpart, Bellsprout. Then the Johto region came along and messed it all up. Their first mistake was creating a branched evolution for the Bellsprout line and then letting it go. Granted, it would probably be superfluous as well, but at least they would have maintained the connection, instead of leaving it in the dust. And it doesn't help that Bellossom probably confused some people for not being connected to Bellsprout, but Oddish instead. Second mistake was changing their first inclination for having Bellossom actually look like it was supposed to be related to any of the Gloom family, but instead of anything remotely resembling those colors, they opted for random bright greens. But mainly, the biggest mistake is that Bellossom is a pure grass type. What happened to the poison? All of the rest of them had it, Vileplume has it. This does make the Gen 2 edition different, I suppose, which is what I wanted, but I didn't mean for them to make it worse on purpose. Losing a type when evolving can only ever lead to less usefulness. Quiver Dance is about the only worthwhile perk that Bellossom gets that Vileplume doesn't. Otherwise, it seems that Vileplume has all the best moves on its side. I realize that some people like Bellossom, but you really wouldn't lose anything if it were gone, since there are plenty of other tiny grass women from which to choose. And Gloom can only really take a step down by veering off in a wild direction that has nothing to do with any of its previously established traits. Number 4 best, Rockruff. Generation 7 gave us probably the best early game dog Pokemon in my opinion with Rockruff. This adorable pup surprised everyone by being a pure rock type, but even more so by splitting its evolutions between the time of day. Lycanroc evolved between the different worlds of day and night that exist in Alola through the alternate versions of Sun and Moon, and while it is once again technically the same Pokemon, they do not act like it. Midday Lycanroc is an awesome wolf with rock spikes poking out, and one of my best teammates from Gen 7. And then there's the Midnight form that's just a straight up werewolf Pokemon. Not only does Lycanroc come with great design options, but they do possess varying stats and even move pools, like giving Midday form the signature Accelerock. This was good enough, but then we got yet another option with the Dusk form of Lycanroc, which is essentially just a combination between the two. Now this one might be harder to get, but it is probably the coolest one they've got, and meets in the middle with both stats and move pool, so it's a good choice if you're indecisive. Even though these are technically the same Pokemon, your choice on which form you'll use says a lot about you as a trainer. Or, hey, why not choose all three? I won't stop you, because these wolves are some of the best branched evolutions around. Number 3 worst, Kubfu. Honestly, I kinda forget about Kubfu, but I don't really understand the point of its branching evolutions into Urshifu. You can either get the single strike form or the rapid strike form. Putting aside the fact that I'm not a fan of the explanation for why this Pokemon evolves with a scroll, but having two forms of this Pokemon seems redundant. The One Punch version ends up becoming a Dark type, and the other one just becomes a Waterbender. Never mind that there's nothing aquatic about it. I guess maybe it could have grown gills under its fur. However, besides the opposing types being added, there's nothing at all that makes these Pokemon stand apart. They get one signature move between them and one single other move related to their type. Other than that, minimal difference, they have the exact same level up moveset. They also share the exact same stats. Not a single point shifts between the two forms. So what's the point of locking this off in an irrevocable evolution rather than giving the player the ability to transfer between them as a form change? It's not like it looks that different, they just flip portions of the hair up and down to signify the change, which is just stupid in my opinion, but still. Even the Gigantamax forms are basically the same, just a red and a blue version, as Pokemon is prone to do, but I once again have to reiterate that branched evolutions should be able to validate their own existence by offering something that you can't get otherwise, more than just a surface level type swap, to actually make it a difficult choice. And when even a legendary can't pull that off, it's a pretty big letdown. Number 3 best, Cosmom. Now this is how you do branching legendary evolutions. After a little Nebby friend becomes the densest thing in the universe, it can evolve into either a radiant sun lion or a mysterious moonbat. It doesn't hurt that these outcomes both look amazing, but they also have their own differing types and plenty of moves that the other one can't get. Now you can't actually affect the outcome of which evolution you'll get since it's based on the game, but you made that choice already when you bought the one with it on the cover. Solgaleo and Lunala might both be Psychic type, but that, and an affinity for stars, seem to be about the only thing that they share. One is a Full Metal Sun Eater, and the other is a nocturnal Moongeist creature of the night. And while I may lean towards the Steel-type quadruped, there's not a huge gap in quality here like some of the other mascot pairings. The designs are top-notch, and they can both be useful in a fight, no doubt. So as unimpressive as Cosmog might be, it's worth the slog of training it to become one of these massive creatures of legend, if for nothing else than to ride it through ultraspace on an interdimensional shining hunt. Number 2 worst, Poliwhirl. Just to reiterate the point, not every pairing I declare as worst has both Pokemon being bad. Case in point, Poliwhirl is a solid middle evolution, and I really like Poliwrath. It's a beast to use and had a unique type combination until Gen 5, but Poliwrath being so good is what makes Politoed such a disappointment. A frog coming from tadpoles makes enough sense, but it all but abandons any semblance of continuity in the design with all new colors and body shape, and if you kinda squint you can still maybe see a swirl like before. If nothing else, they couldn't have kept the Mickey Mouse gloves? Now you might say, Politoed is good because it was used all the time for rain teams. Well, first of all, that doesn't make the Pokémon good just because it had a gimmick worth exploiting, but in fact, I would argue this made Politoed bad, since it almost single-handedly created a war of weather conditions for an entire generation, and it's still even bad after they've nerfed it. I feel the same about Politoed as I do about Bellossom, which is, if they were their own Pokemon off by themselves, I probably wouldn't mind. But the fact that they're related to previously established Pokemon for no reason makes me judge them much harder when they bring down the overall quality, even if the other Pokemon were just okay. So in my book, Politoed could just as easily not be related to Poliwhirl, especially since nobody would miss it, as we have other, arguably better options for Drizzle now. Number 2 best, Curlia. One of the standouts from Hoenn was the elegant Psychic-type line that turned out to be your rival's signature Pokemon. Everybody seems to love Gardevoir, even if it is poor Professor Oak's worst nightmare. But it didn't stop there, because next time in Gen 4, Curlia was gifted another option with Gallade. This was yet another beloved Pokemon. It seems this line just can't miss. Gallade also gained the fighting type, and while not the first time we've seen this combination, a psychic Pokemon with blades for arms certainly creates a striking visual. Of course, eventually the original line had the fairy type added, which just made them even better, and only improved the relationship between the two options, one being a strong physical psychic type, which is hard to come by, and the other a brilliant special fairy type. You know that whichever one you pick, you'll get something unique that the other branch wouldn't be able to provide. So it is exactly what a branched evolution should be. These Pokemon are so all-around wonderful that they bear the distinction of being the only branched evolutions where both Pokemon got a Mega Evolution, only increasing their graceful, dapper appearance and brute strength. So if you're someone who likes variety but also has a tough time with commitment, why not go with Curlia and figure out what to do later, because honestly, you can't go wrong either way. Number 1 worst, Burme. Burme is a pretty underwhelming Pokémon. The totally not regional bug from Sinnoh can have multiple forms, and it can even evolve based on those multiple forms, which would be enough for most Pokémon, but Burme also sometimes turns into a moth. Yeah, this is all a little bit of a mess. Mothim is really just thoroughly unimpressive with mediocre stats across the board and paper-thin defenses. Then the Wormadam, which are much slower, have their defenses as the highest option, even though they're all bug types. Granted, one of them is Steel type, which is a great combination, but another one is part Grass, which is one of the worst combinations. So not only does this Pokemon have the unchangeable form alterations upon evolution, but also a completely different slot in the dex for no reason. You need to pay close attention to the last place that you battle with your Burme so that you can get the cloak that you want when it evolves. Unless it's a dude, that is, then it'll just become a moth no matter what. I've talked before about how much I don't like these Pokemon, but I think it says it all when a Pokemon literally has a trash form. So a Pokemon having 4 lackluster options for evolution means that it's got to be the worst for branching out. Number 1 best, Eevee. What else could it be? From the very beginning, Eevee gave us 3 great options to use. And even though there are no shortage of water, fire, or electric choices in Kanto, you still see players actively choosing to use these adorable canine-esque creatures over options that might be technically better. Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon each have a stat emphasis between attack, HP, or speed, on top of all of the other unique moves they'll be able to learn. That alone would probably be enough, but we know why Eevee's at the top. We got Umbreon and Espeon in Johto, Leafeon and Glaceon in Sinnoh, and Sylveon in Kalos. It is still more than a little disappointing that the latest even-numbered generation didn't give us a new evolution, but still, it's best not to be greedy. Having 8 different options for what you turn Eevee into is incredible for Pokemon fans everywhere. Whether it's for a type or you like a certain design, everybody's got at least one of these evolutions that they'll love. Umbreon is my favorite pure dark type. Jolteon is my favorite electric type overall. When they needed a new representative to show everyone what the fairy type was all about, they opted for another evolution, knowing how beloved they are. And we can't forget that their source is just as endearing, becoming the mascot of its own game, which I still play and enjoy to this day. There are some other branching evolutions like the Hitmons, but the disparity between those forms makes it miss out for me. And maybe you count some regional variants, but you cannot deny that Vaporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, Espeon, Umbreon, Leafeon, Glaceon, and Sylveon are phenomenal. They would be on their own, but the fact that they're all related means that they create new and exciting variations that others couldn't possibly have. They are undoubtedly the best branched evolutions out there, even if we never got another one. But the best part is, you never know when the next one might crop up. So, those are the top 6 best and worst branched evolutions in Pokémon. Which branching Pokémon do you find the greatest or least necessary? Let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!